pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to HJN Season 5. So, for this instance, we are back, of course, with more franchises. A little surprising, don't you think? Well, in any case though, we are going to be going with James Bond for this particular installment of the series. What can I say about James Bond? Well, first off, it came out as far back as 1953 by Ian Fleming, whom of course was known for a number of different journalisms as well as various other fictional writings that he put together. The thing is that Ian Fleming has had himself a bit of a career, living from 1908 to 1964. At 56 years old, you could say that he died well before the mass success of a certain franchise that he, of course, had created. There was, of course, a unique image that he himself drew as a piece of the Daily Express comic strip, in which that it would, of course, lead to the development of the James Bond character entirely. James Bond, of course, is seen as an MI6 agent codenamed 007, which is 007. The 00 is just there for shortening. It's also a bit of a governing subterm, if you will, sort of like a slang that governments specifically use. The usage of a 00 in this instance is of course common when it comes to referring to different agents that are specifically coming from England. And 007 is certainly no exemption to this. James Bond, of course, would have himself a bit of a successful role in the 1960s and 1970s with actors such as Sean Connery, David Niven, George Lazenby, and of course, Daniel Craig. The thing is that Eon Productions currently holds the rights to all the novels that were originally put together by Ian Fleming himself based on the character. And the character James Bond, of course, would go from the movies to the silver screen with a number of different James Bond related films, coming out with such unique tastes, and a number of films that of course were also put together by Eon himself, starting as far back as Dr. No in 1962, in which Sean Connery would of course be the exact role that would be put together for Bond himself, and would last up until 1969 with the installment known as You Only Live Twice. George Lazenby, of course, would take over, and Sean Connery would also make a return in Diamonds Are Forever. But Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton would take over the character's role for quite a while, especially throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, especially leading up to the point in which that 1995's GoldenEye would allow for Pierce Brosnan to assume the role just as well, with various other films that would star Brosnan, leading up to Daniel Craig's takeover of the character from Casino Royale, going all the way up to 2020's No Time to Die. So you can say that since day one, we've had a good amount of actors here to work with, and with all the unique things that are put together for James Bond, with all the crazy co-op stealth missions that take place, to all the video games, I especially remember when we got a copy of GoldenEye 007 Reloaded, which of course was a remake of the highly acclaimed N64 title known as GoldenEye. Released in 1997, a couple years after the film came out, it did a pretty good job as a first-person shooter for a 64-bit console, and fast forward to 2011, which it would be remade for the PS3, it did a pretty good job. But it's very likely we might get ourselves a number of second hits here, because apart from the unique titles, Goldfinger and You Only Live Twice, No Time to Die, there's just a lot of unique titles that you can see out there, a lot of which are very memorable and of course have been produced and distributed by various companies. But by today, when we are expected to get another GoldenEye game this March, yeah, so I'd say it's an appropriate time for me to be talking about James Bond. And apart from his personality, which of course is just him being all cool and calm in any tense situation, even various partners of his get put up to the trigger by a hostage taker, and yet he doesn't really flinch at much for it, because you could say that he is the agent with a lot of minds. And I will say that almost every single role that they have put together for him is done pretty well, but some people might think of a few of the films, especially during the Lazenby era of James Bond films, that unfortunately weren't all too great. Some might argue the same thing with most of the other actors, like Connery and Dalton. And I'm sure that Craig might have a few things to say about the negativity going on with some of his films, considering the fact that he's been the James Bond character himself for about 20 years. I can't be certain if he is, of course, going to be replaced by another actor, but only time will tell whether that's the case. So, I don't have very much more to say here about James Bond. A lot of it is on the more self-explanatory side, and it's better for me to just simply say, go watch the movies instead of watch my videos on this stuff. Because I cannot really explain every possible detail that comes out around. Otherwise, I'd have to talk about the movies themselves, because I have an entirely different series dedicated to talk about movies. So, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.